back and relax. You're listening to episode 243 of the WealthTech Today podcast. And I'm your host, Craig Iskowitz, founder of Ezra Group Consulting. And this podcast features interviews, news, and analysis on the trends and best practices all around wealth management technology. And this is episode 243, as I said, and it's part of our series we're doing called the Breakaway Blueprint. And we are interviewing leaders in the industry from technology vendors who are targeting breakaways with their technology. My guest this episode was Adrian Johnstone, co-founder and CEO of Practifi. Now, Adrian has over 20 years in the industry. He's been at Practifi all 11 years since co-founding it in 2013, and he was made CEO last March. Now, Adrian's based in Australia, but travels to the US often, as he was for this interview. We spoke about a wide range of topics, including organic growth and their sales pipeline management feature they've added recently, how they are positioning themselves as an operational backbone for advisors rather than a financial/investment tool. And we got a little bit of peek into the Practifi roadmap. But before we get started.
At Ezra Group, we've seen tech stacks of hundreds of RIAs. And let me tell you, most of them are loaded down with tech debt. So you shouldn't feel too bad about yours. But let's face it, tech debt is like a giant anchor holding back your business growth. If you want to free your firm for exponential growth, you should run, not walk, to our website, ezragroup.com, and fill out the Contact Us form. Our experienced team can evaluate your current tech ecosystem, deliver targeted recommendations, optimize your existing systems and operations, or run an RFP and help you implement new software to take your firm to the next level. You can take advantage of our free consultation offer by going to ezragroup.com.
All right. I'm excited to introduce my next guest. It is Adrian Johnstone, founder and CEO of Practifi. Adrian, welcome to the US again. Glad you're in the country.
Fantastic, Craig. I'm always happy to be here. It feels like somewhere that I spend increasingly more than half of my time, which is nice. Nice to be here at a warmer part of the year as well.
Perfect. Yeah, you're in Chicago, yes?
Yes, yeah, in Chicago. The Midwest is turning on the weather for me, which is nice.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in Chicago. Coming in May, late May is a good time to hit Chicago.
I like to think that all year is a great time to hit Chicago, but I know those who have to live through the winter probably disagree with me.
I like Chicago. I have a lot of friends in Chicago and companies we work with in Chicago, but I try not to go there in the winter. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but if I can avoid it, I will. I prefer to go in the summertime when it's not freezing cold. Although I am going back, I'll be there the end of next month for the Morningstar Investment Conference.
Oh, nice, just down the road from us.
Just on the road. End of June is a great time to be in Chicago. The frost has just ended, right?
You get a good couple of weeks before it'll snow.
Yeah, right, exactly. I got a little bit of time. That's just that small window between. Yeah, exactly. So, all right, man. Enough of that. So let's just jump right in. Please give us a 30-second elevator pitch for Practifi.
For sure. So Practifi, for those who don't know us, we are a wealth-specific CRM automation platform, and kind of think of us as the operational backbone for RIAs. We cover out into family offices. We touch up into some enterprises. We sit on a Salesforce chassis. But what we've done is take all the hard work and the heartache out of it. So instead of having to start with a blank piece of paper, you get to start with something that was built specifically for your needs. We then work with you to tune it and dial it and make it your own, make it add value, and support you through sweating that asset to get the best out of it.
Awesome. I know a lot of people have issues. They think Salesforce is going to be a panacea and it's a great product, but it's not that easy to use. So having an application that's custom built for wealth that sits on top of Salesforce, but makes it better, just seems like a great idea.
We like to think so. I'm always entertained when people tell me they're going to go away and build their own solution. And then they say, I'm going to start with Salesforce. So you're not building your own solution, you're building on top of someone else's. But then, of course, that conversation goes into, well, we want ultimate control and we want ultimate flexibility and we think we can do it all and know it all. And I often use the parallel of me flying a lot and say, like, I'd love ultimate control over the the flight schedule, the destinations, the departure times, the in-flight entertainment and catering and all those sorts of things. There's zero chance I want to trust my life to flying on a plane I built and that I have to maintain.
Right.
And I'm always astounded how many otherwise very smart people in the wealth management industry seem to think that being a technology company on the side is a good extension of being a wealth management firm.
The clients we know that have built custom Salesforce, they don't realize, and then they have to hire their own developers who are on staff full time forever to maintain what they built. And then I just had a call yesterday with a $6 billion RIA, and they're saying, well, maybe we insource too much. And we thought it was a good idea, but now we've got people on staff that we can't never get rid of because we've got to keep maintaining this software we built.
I mean, this is a conversation I've had so many times with people where I always want to pose a couple of questions. One is, do you believe that the valuation you would get for your firm in an acquisition is made higher because you have custom software? And zero people will ever answer that yes, if they're being honest with themselves. And then do you measure your business, like most advice firms would, on a ratio of headcount to AUM? Because now you've got some software developers in that headcount, but they're not contributing to the AUM. So you've got a high risk, high effort, low return model that people we would never suggest that as an investment strategy to an end investor. But here we have people taking that risk on all the time.
That's an excellent point. I'm going to steal that one when I get that question.
You're welcome. So you can just quote me at the bottom.
I was quoting, circa 2024. This is back when Adrian Johnstone I stole this from. Yeah, I'll put that on all the time. Let's jump into some new features. Now, if you want to read about the current Practifi functionality, you go to the website. What's the website?
It's just practifi.com.
And that's with I's, right? The I at the end.
It is. It's. I'm old enough that I remember hi-fi. And so I think if we think of it that way, it's nice and easy to remember. It's just practifi.com.
There you go. So you can go there. You can read about all the great features of Practifi, but there's some new ones coming out that I want to talk about. One of them is sales and pipeline management. What have you done around there that's going to help firms that are looking to grow?
Yeah, so we spend a lot of time in that space already. Of course, you within Practifi Today, you can set up deals that you're running with your existing clients. You can manage a flow of prospects, those sorts of things. But we're very conscious that the wealth management industry's sales machine, particularly if you're talking in an organic growth context, is very different to the traditional sales pipeline that the generic tools like Microsoft or Salesforce have embedded in them. You're not selling a widget and moving on. So we've really taken that core capability and expanded it and deepened it so that you can run a referrals model. We do a lot of work with tracking centers of influence and client referrals. We have a very rich set of prospecting and it links out to marketing platforms, and so we've just bolstered that significantly. But Practifi is role based, so we also recognize that in larger firms, and they're typically our clients. Typically, our average client size is in the multi-billion dollars. They go through to the from the smaller teams of a dozen or so through to the many hundreds, and those businesses, as they become much more acquisitive, tend to have M&A, business development, streaming teams. And so we recognize that their sales pipeline fits a little closer to a more traditional pipeline, but again, is different. It's more of a journey. It's a little more organic along the way. So we've been working with some clients. We've lent in fairly hard in discovery, and we're excited towards the back part of this year to be pushing out enhancements to our business development app that will effectively mean that you can run both an inorganic sales strategy and an organic sales strategy in the same tool. Something that you can sort of do, if you look at a very generic sales flow in a standard CRM environment today, but we're leaning in hard to look at all of the metrics that you would use for deal benefit realization and all those sorts of pieces as they come through. Really exciting time, obviously, given the amount of consolidation and M&A activity in the industry, coming out of a record quarter of that I saw for Q1. So we believe that really well timed to that need, and particularly for those clients and other firms in the industry that see M&A as their path forward.
So when you say an inorganic sales strategy, that's an M&A process, right? They're looking for M&A targets.
Correct. So how do you define a target? What are the pieces of data that you're wanting to capture? What are the metrics that you're using to validate that it's a good deal worth doing? But recognizing and ultimately where we see this going is when you've identified a deal and you want to drive that through the entire process, of course, at the back end, the people that you've done the deal with become users in the system.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to be able to check, well, we bought a $1.4 billion team. Part of the deal economics was that at least 1.1 was going to come across. What did? How's the activity been? We've got an earn-out to manage. What does that look like? We want them to be able to do that entire process in the one system. So we're laying the groundwork for a lot of that today. The basis of it has been there for a long while, but we're extending that now into how do you identify a deal? How do you rate them? Where does it come through? And then ultimately taking that through to how do you measure the success of that deal out the back end? What can you learn from each of those acquisitions in your pipeline?
That is cool. I don't know anyone's doing that. And so if you're for some of our more acquisitive clients that maybe do 5 or 6 or more deals a year, after a couple of years, you'll have some nice data on both the targets you did go after and the targets you didn't go after.
That's right.
And so you're tracking things like earnout, there's other success rate of how much the assets they moved over from the firm. And then over a couple of years, looking at that, how successful that deal was, what the ROI on that deal was.
That's right. And then, ultimately within Practifi, we have a tool we call Propel, which is a business analytics platform built out using the Tableau CRM suite. And that would allow you then to have all of that data fed in alongside all of your user and end client data, your end investor data. So you can actually see a series over time that says, well, we bought this team in Rochester, we moved them in, they managed to get 90% of the money to move over. 2 years down the line, do we still have it? Has it grown? How has that gone? And trace that all the way back to the original deal.
Oh, that's excellent. So they may even find out they're doing a good job, or they may be finding out they're overpaying.
That's right, or that there's a particular type of firm. Often we hear people, everyone wants to buy the absolute cream, but sometimes it's the B and C grade deals that ultimately over time deliver the best value. So being able to really dig in and understand that, just like we do as a tech company, understanding our ideal client profile, it's them being able to understand the ideal acquisition target.
So are there any other characteristics you're tracking for your clients to identify the ideal M&A target?
So at the moment, we're working with a group of clients to understand what they track today. And that'll be everything from, the average age of the team, the ownership hierarchy and structure, the nature of locations. Are they single location, multi-location, age demographic of clients, average account balances, all those kind of metrics that you would look at, to then line those up and see how they fit in the puzzle that is the combined entity. You don't want to make an acquisition that looks great on paper, but have a core strategy to lower the average investor age only to buy a book of business that pushes it up.
Or to lower the average. What if you're buying a book of business that has a lower revenue per client?
Yeah. So you want to make sure that that you're keeping an eye on those metrics as a whole, because for some of our clients, we've got clients who do 8, 9, 10 of these acquisitions a year, often of smaller teams. They need to be able to very dynamically monitor what's happening there.
Do you pull in any data from the target's QuickBooks or accounting?
We haven't delved into that today. It's an area we've spoken to people about. We have the ability. We've actually invested in parallel to branch the conversation slightly. We've invested in parallel in building some really powerful data ingestion capability. One challenge with the Salesforce platform that many people encounter is it can be cumbersome to pull large volumes of data into the platform. Super powerful once it's in there. Can be a bit of a challenge to get it in. So we, as a strategic partner with both Salesforce and Microsoft, have gone away and invested pretty heavily in building some Azure infrastructure that really allows us to do a lot with data. And so that was built with some very specific needs in mind. It's now being augmented so that any flat file that we can get our hands on can actually be sucked up and ingested into the tool using that same infrastructure. And then we're building that out, we're extending that. So actually our clients can do that themselves. So as they get any format of file, they can load it once, create a mapping, and then just ingest that kind of, think an SFTP coming in and just auto load. It kind of feels like an integration without needing to go and build a bespoke integration every time.
The reason I asked that is firms like Truelytics, which was acquired by Envestnet a couple of years ago, became experts in that and pulling in data from QuickBooks, which most RIAs use, unless they're really, really big. QuickBooks is probably the most common accounting platform for RIAs, but every RIA does it differently. They have a different chart of accounts. So you've got to be able to normalize all that, and getting that data in would really tell you what the value of the firm is versus, well, here's what our revenue is. There's a lot behind that you don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Not an area we've delved into yet, but again, we sit in a very fortunate place, I think, where we have this incredibly powerful chassis sitting under the hood, but we're not dependent on their products or their product direction. We just use Salesforce as a platform, and so it allows us to be incredibly focused on our clients and what they want to achieve, without having to worry too much about all the kind of nitty-gritty under the hood. That gives us the bandwidth to step back and say, well, let's explore. Let's really think about what this looks like. And when I talk to our investors, I talk about Practifi as an operational backbone. We see that the Orions and Envestnets have created the financial backbone of a firm, but that operational backbone is an open space. Today, it's a lot of point solutions, and we see Practifi really stepping in to fill that operational backbone for our clients.
Speaking of acquisitions, if I'm an RIA aggregator buying up RIAs, but then keeping them independent rather than merging them in, can I use Propel Business Analytics to compare all my different RIAs to each other, how well they're doing, who's profitable, who's not profitable, where they're going, what I can fix?
You absolutely can. So you would take a data feed. It's quicker and easier if those individual firms are also Practifi users, but it's not a requirement. So at the top end, at the aggregator home office, you'd have Practifi set up with Propel hanging off the back, and they feed in as external data sources. So you can also have data feed in from other CRMs, other databases, data lakes, and you can push data in and out. It's a very powerful capability for clients where all ends of the rope are on Practifi. It's much more plug and play.
That's cool. And with other acquisitive firms, you would want to shift gears into something else. You had mentioned you built. What is this where you've, if I'm a firm and I'm buying up other RIAs, and they've got different portfolio accounting systems, you can integrate those? I'm very interested in that. It's something we work on a lot. And if I have a better tool to do that, I'd be interested to hear more about it.
Yeah, so we know that these these acquisitive firms, particularly the larger shops, when you get up into the tens and even hundreds of billions, are doing a lot of acquisitions, often of multi-billion-dollar firms themselves. So they have long established client books. They're working in their portfolio accounting tool. And when they make that acquisition, what they want really across the firm from a standardization perspective is a standard client record, standard workflow, standard reporting, all that great stuff that comes from the CRM. But a real barrier to achieving that today is that they then also need to do a portfolio accounting tool migration, or they need to pump everything into a data lake, and they need to pull it all back out and push it into somewhere. And they are big, complex technology projects, high risk, low return, long time frame. We've had a few clients who sit in that space talk to us over the years around, wouldn't it be great if we could acquire a firm, move the CRM into Practifi, but not do the portfolio accounting system migration, maybe ever, but certainly not as part of that transition activity. And so we took it upon ourselves to really dig in and investigate how we would go about doing that. And we've now solved, and we'll have, again, coming out later this year, the ability that you can have any number of portfolio accounting systems plugged into one Practifi org. So you may have 3 Black Diamond, 2 Orion, an Adapar, and 4 Tamaracks, all plugged into one CRM concurrently. So no interposed layer, no need for that technology project. Just plug another one in. We've done that by looking at how we can authenticate and how we change the structure within Practifi to accommodate lots of plugs into one. So I'm super excited for that. We have so many clients who are acquisitive, and we just see them going through that pain and really want to be able to help them solve it.
What data are you pulling in from the 3 Black Diamonds, 4 Tamaracks, 1 Orion? What data am I getting?
It varies a lot based on the individual provider, but if we throw a blanket over the most common data set, it's the portfolios, the underlying holdings, current performance data, lots of numerics. We then navigate out, in most instances, to the portfolio accounting system if you want to look at portfolio reporting or performance kind of attributes. But then some Orion, with Orion Connect, for example, they pull in portfolio reporting metrics into Practifi. Adapar, we were in the press just recently, have released a performance widget, and we've now got that fully integrated into Practifi as well. So depending on which of those systems you're on, you get more or less there. But from a data set perspective, we keep client and household information in sync. We keep the portfolio structures and groupings in sync, and we keep the holdings, the kind of underlying assets detail in sync, so that, if we look at the bulk of the transactions or interactions that occur in a firm, many of them can be answered without having to navigate to the portfolio accounting system. So that client experience is richer because you can see all that information in the one place. You're not having to navigate to multiple systems to answer a simple question.
What do you mean by client and household information in sync? Are you syncing it across the platforms back to them, or just internally inside Practifi you're syncing that? So I can.
No, we're pushing it back across. So if you update your home address details in Practifi, it'll push into Tamarack. And if a request happens at Tamarack, it'll make its way back to Practifi. That kind of two-way sync of demographic information is a very common pattern. But of course, we don't author the listed asset data. So that's viewable in Practifi, but not editable in Practifi. But if you're tracking held away assets, car collections, houses, all those kind of things, you can enter those into Practifi and pass them as well.
That's impressive. Is this running now?
Yeah. So the ability to connect individuals of those systems is running now. By the end of the year, it'll be the ability to connect an unlimited number of them.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, we're running out of time. I have a couple other things to ask you. You had mentioned briefly earlier about ingesting large amounts of data into Salesforce. And can you expand on the Azure infrastructure you built and some of the other work you've done to make it easier to ingest large amounts of data into Salesforce?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the need at our end is great with high demand in the market and lots of people making the move. Of course, when you do a data migration from one CRM to another, there's a big complex set of data that gets ripped out of one system. It's got to be loaded. So, it wasn't a selfless act. We really needed to help our poor data engineers.
Wasn't for the betterment of mankind.
Not the betterment of, well, it depends. If you're a Practifi data engineer, it was
Right.
for the betterment of mankind.
Right.
But that allowed us to really look and say, well, what format do those files come out in? You know, if we look at our kind of primary donor competitor set, we're able to look at the standard files that come out through there and actually take it so that we can ingest. So the client will upload that data in through a secure portal. It's ingested up into Azure, formatted, and then predefined scripts run and push that data into Practifi, but in a way that's optimized for the mapping experience and the API load rate experience. So the bumpers that you hit trying to shove lots of data into different systems. And so we've now got that so that it can be driven by either standard file formats for the other kind of wealth CRMs that come across, perhaps those that are suited more to smaller firms, and as they grow, they move out. But then also where files come in a template. So if you've got an Excel format file that is going to be consistent, perhaps it's protocol data or a book of business that you buy that comes away, you can ingest those as well. So we're doing work right now to make that a client-facing tool. One of the challenges with pushing data into platforms like Salesforce is that it's kind of one and done. You push it, and if you find a problem, you've got to back it all out again, and it's very messy. So we've taken care of that as well with data staging capabilities, so you can load it, review it, be happy with it, and then go. So really trying to make that a client-friendly activity, because again, where we see so much acquisition activity within our client base, we don't want to slow them down with those migrations. We want to give them a lot of control. So that's been a huge area of focus for us. And again, it allows us to really make the best out of the Microsoft world, and you really unify that with the Salesforce world.
We all want client-friendly activities, Adrian. I'm sure we can all agree on that. All right, so last question, product roadmap. What's coming down the pike this year for Practifi clients? What can they expect to see? What new exciting stuff do you have in the plan?
So we've touched on a few things there. We are also going to be pushing some really exciting capabilities out around the way that meetings are scheduled, prepared for, and run. So part of that looks at how we touch into the kind of visual tools that are used these days, primarily the video conferencing world. But a lot of it is about that preparation process. We know that advisors, on average, hate using CRMs. They just don't love it. It's too much clicking. It's really workflow, client service, operations-oriented technology. And so we are working very hard to bring all of that experience into a really neat capsule, so that an advisor who's prepping for a meeting can go in, consume everything they need, have that spun around, and back out the other end with as low touch as possible. Ultimately with a goal, and not on a this year timeline, but ultimately with a goal of bringing that into the Microsoft AI world, and how does that sit maybe in the background of Teams and email, and do a lot of that work for them. It's an area that we continue to push and experiment as well. Of course, some of the other pieces we touched on already around portfolio accounting systems and sales and growth pipelines. There's always a few other little pearls in there that sneak their way through. Some straight through processing work that we I can't confirm or deny that we're doing with a couple of custodians that'll help a lot with account opening and account maintenance transactions over time as well.
What are some of the things you're able to do if you bring it into the Microsoft AI world? And how do you compare Microsoft and Salesforce are two players who are trying to be, control the world of AI, Microsoft with their open AI investment, Salesforce with their Einstein. How do you compare the two in their AI strategy?
Look, I think like all AI strategies at the moment, there's a lot of hype.
Mhm.
You got to go digging a little bit for substance. I would say at the moment, Microsoft has more substance sitting there. They had a bigger head start, I guess. The goal for us is to really meet the advisor where they want to be. And we know that that's not in a CRM. So a heap of AI investment natively in the CRM platform might be a challenge for advisors to see value. So we're looking at how do we leverage the work Microsoft is already doing? How do we take the capabilities that they're already using with Copilot and other tools to embed into the Office 365 experience? And how do we hide Practifi in the background there so that an advisor can, email a client and get prompted with other content they might want to include in the email, have a meeting coming up, and have it, linking to the previous video recording. All those kind of tools and capabilities that we can piece together that are already there. We work very closely. Obviously, we work with the Microsoft side and the Salesforce side. We work very closely with what's happening in Einstein AI, and we can see it in the large language models and those pieces. Nothing there is hugely exciting when you scratch under the hood just yet. I have no doubt it will get there. It's an amazing business with amazing tools. Right now, I think for wealth advisors, it's probably something it's a little way off.
And on that note, thanks for sharing that insight. Really appreciate it. We're running out of time. We are out of time. So everyone listening, please go to practifi.com with an I at the end, Practifi like hi-fi, to learn more about Practifi. And Adrian, thank you so much for sharing with us and being on the program.
Thanks so much, Craig. I'm always happy to chime in.
Hey, it's Craig again. Here are my top 3 takeaways from this episode. We talked about organic growth and their sales pipeline management. It's great for tracking centers of influence. They've got prospecting links to marketing platforms, and they can run inorganic plus organic sales strategies in the same tool, which I thought was really unique. I haven't heard of that in any CRM where you can track the inorganic sales strategies. In other words, looking at your M&A targets, looking at deal economics, tracking your earnout, all inside of Practifi. Makes a lot of sense. I know we work with a number of RIAs that are very acquisitive, backed by PE firms, and they don't have this. They track it using spreadsheets usually. They've got tons of spreadsheets with a tab for each target, and they have to copy paste it, and it's hard to standardize that type of information or run reports on it. So having it inside your CRM makes a lot of sense. I liked how they're positioning themselves as an operational backbone versus financial investment tool, and how they're working with RIA aggregators as well, and how they're helping with portfolio accounting migrations to integrate multiple instances of Practifi across and installing things like performance widgets inside their system from other applications. And finally, love to hear about the product roadmap. Some of the little tools they're working on, like meeting scheduling, prep and automation, really sound interesting. All right, you've made it to the end of another episode of the WealthTech Today podcast. Thanks for listening. But before we go, head to our website, EzraGroup.com, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, and sign up for our newsletter. Once a month, you'll receive an email chock full of wealth management goodness, news, information, updates. You know the drill. You won't be disappointed. Thanks for listening, and talk to you all again next time.